Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic Goblin noise!
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. You can also use the promo code MTGMudsta for 5% off your orders from Face to Face Games, Canada's largest Magic the Gathering store, with qualified orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game was filmed at Wizard's Tower, and Corbin is rejoining us with Kruphix, God of Horizons. He keeps a Mistcutter Hydra, Aeon Chronicler, Altered Ego, a Forest, and 3 islands. I've borrowed Iroas, keeping Nahiri the Harbinger, Tajik Legion's Edge, Ajani Steadfast, Perforos God of the Forge, Intrepid Hero, Temple of Triumph, and Plains. New to the channel is Kale, playing Torgaar Famine Incarnate, keeping a Rise to Dark Realms, Cabal Evangel, Black Market, Crypt of Agadim, Doomblade, Swamp, and Field Creeper. Pat is back, having borrowed my Erebos God of the Dead deck, keeping Terrain Generator, Magus of the Coffers, Deserted Temple, Solemn Simulacrum, Ivory Tower, and 2 Swamps. Kale wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws and plays a Swamp. I draw, play a Temple of Triumph, and scry 1, putting to the bottom, and pass. Corbin draws, plays a Forest, and passes. Patches plays a Swamp and passes turn. Kale draws and plays a tapped Crypt of Agadim. I have a Sunhome Fortress of the Legion for turn and pass. Corbin plays an island, passing as well. Pat draws, plays a Terrain Generator, and taps 1 for an Ivory Tower before passing turn. Kale draws and casts Cabal Evangel. My turn has me playing a Plains and casting Tajik. Moving to combat, I strike him at Corbin for 3 and pass. Corbin draws and plays an island. Pat plays a Deserted Temple, passing back to Kale. Kale draws but is stuck on lands, playing at a Field Creeper before passing turn. I play a tapped Windscarred Crag, gaining 1 and going to combat. I attack Pat this time for 3 and pass. Corbin draws and plays a Reliquary Tower. He passes, and on his end step, Pat activates the Terrain Generator, putting a Swamp into play. Pat gains 3 life on his upkeep thanks to the Ivory Tower, and draws for turn. He then plays a Solemn Simulacrum, going to find a Swamp, and passing. Kale still hasn't found a land yet, and to avoid discarding down to hand size, he casts at sorcery speed a Doomblade on my Tajik. He then adds Insult to Injury by attacking me for 4 once my only creature's dead, and passes. I draw and play Nahiri the Harbinger, and then bounce my Windscarred Crag with a Boros Garrison. After that, I uptick Nahiri, discarding Intrepid Hero to draw a card, and pass. Corbin draws and plays a Forest. He then suspends the Aeon Chronicler, putting 1 into the X, and passing. Pat draws and casts Erebos in his main phase. He then activates the God to draw a card and lose 2 life. Kale draws, doesn't find a land, and passes turn. I draw and replay my Windscarred Crag. I then play and activate a Wayfarer's Bauble, going to grab a land. Once that's done, I uptick Nahiri again, and pass. Corbin downticks and casts his Aeon Chronicler, and then draws for turn. He plays an island and casts Fortune's Favor, targeting me. Moving to combat, he swings the hasty Aeon Chronicler to take Nahiri out, and passes turn. Pat gains 1 from the Ivory Tower, and draws. He plays a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, and then casts Worst Fears, targeting Corbin. After that, he passes turn. Kale draws and plays a Swamp. He then casts a Noxious Grodin, and swings his 2 creatures at Corbin for 4. With nothing else, he passes. I draw and play an Unclaimed Territory, naming soldiers. I then cast Perforos out of the Forge, and follow up with an Archetype of Courage, dealing 2 to my opponents. I then pass turn. Corbin draws as Pat goes to take his turn, and Pat/Corbin plays an island for turn, and then casts a Mistcutter Hydra, putting X into the 0. It comes into play and dies immediately, and once that's done, Pat casts Blue Sun Zenith, targeting himself to draw 3 cards. Pat then shuffles it into Corbin's library, and forces Corbin to swing at me for 6. After that, Pat passes to himself. Pat gains 3 life off the Ivory Tower, and draws for turn. He casts a Rune-Scarred Demon to tutor for a card. He follows up with a Withered Wretch, and passes turn. Kale draws and casts a Footlight Fiend, and then casts Torgaar, sacrificing the Fiend, the Field Creeper, and the Evangel. Torgaar coming in halves Pat's life total, dropping him to 20. And after that, Kale passes. I draw and play a Mountain. I then cast Iroas and follow up with a Johnny Steadfast, upticking him to put a counter onto the archetype. There's no one I really want to attack though, and I just pass turn. Corbin draws and plays an Altered Ego, putting 3 into the X to have it come as a copy of the Rune-Scarred Demon. He tutors for a card and then passes turn. Pat gains 2 on his upkeep and draws. He plays a Cabal Coffers and uses it to cast a Sepulchral Primordial. He returns Tajik, Timestream Navigator, and the Cabal Evangel. He then casts a Polluted Bonds and activates Nykthos once it's out for 10 black mana, casting Exquisite Blood, and then a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. We then each lose 13 life, while Pat gains 78, jumping to 100 life. After that, Pat swings the Rune-Scarred Demon at a Johnny, taking him out and passing turn. Kale draws and swings Torgaar at Corbin to try and get him back in the command zone. Corbin eats it with the Aeon Chronicler, and after that, Kale casts Assassinate on the real Rune-Scarred Demon. He then passes, and at the end of turn, I cast Enlightened Tutor, going to grab Assemble the Legion and put it on top. I draw and cast the Assemble the Legion in my main phase. Moving to combat, I swing Iroas at Pat, who double blocks with Erebos and Solemn. I choose to assign all damage to Erebos so he won't draw a card, and I then pass to Corbin. Corbin draws and plays an island, taking 2 from the Polluted Bond, while Pat gains 4. Corbin then casts a Beacon of Tomorrow, taking an extra turn, and swings his Rune-Scarred Demon copy at Pat for 9. On his second turn, Corbin then draws and casts River's Rebuke, bouncing all non-land permanents to Pat's hand. He then swings both creatures at him for 15. In his post-combat main phase, he casts a Timestream Navigator, passing. Pat draws and plays a Swamp. Pat's main phase has him casting Beseech the Queen, and he goes to find and reveal Exsanguinate, putting to hand. He then untaps his Cabal Coffers with a Deserted Temple, and taps it for more mana to recast Withered Wretch, Sepulchral Primordial, Ivory Tower, and Grey Merchant. Gary drains us for another 9, and Pat gains more life, jumping to 107. The Primordial also brings back the Footlight Fiend and Bassandra. He then uses the remaining mana to activate the Withered Wretch, exiling 2 cards from graveyards, and passes to Kale. Kale draws and plays a Swamp. He recasts the Cabal Evangel and passes turn. I get a catch-up counter on the Assemble the Legion, and make a Soldier token, and deal 2 to the table with Perforos. I then play a Reliquary Tower, and recast Tajik, dealing another 2 to my opponents. I then swing 13 with Tajik mentoring the archetype at Pat, and he declares no blocks, so I pump with Perforos for an extra 4 damage. After that, I cast Relentless Assault and get a second combat phase. I swing everything at Pat again for 19 this time, with another Mentor trigger. With nothing else, I pass turn. Corbin draws and then activates the Timestream Navigator, giving himself another extra turn. He moves to combat, swinging both creatures at Pat, who chumps the Demon copy with Bassandra and takes 7. Corbin then moves to a second turn, drawing and playing Terastodon, destroying Nykthos, Cabal Coffers, and my assembled Legion. With my Elephant coming in, I deal another 2 to the table. Corbin then swings the Demon and the Chronicler at Pat again, who chumps the Chronicler and takes 9. After that, Corbin passes turn. Pat draws and goes to combat. He swings the Primordial at me and the rest at Kale. I take 5, and Kale blocks the 2 elephants, taking 4. After combat, Pat casts an Exsanguinate, draining out the table and winning the game. Game review time. So, full disclosure, this was one of Kale's first EDH games, which you may have noticed is why he played a red and black creature in his black deck. We really didn't make a big deal of it because honestly it didn't affect too much. His deck was also built with a lot of cards that he had left over from his draft nights, but it was pretty cool to see him casting Torgaar and having someone's life total. I'm not too sure why, but it seems like whenever I lend a deck to Pat, he somehow finds a way to steal someone's turn. I think I've actually since cut Worst Fears from Villas, but my goodness did pack in a lot of life this game. It also made me remember that I own a copy of Polluted Bond since I'd cut it from the deck. It is a bit of an expensive enchantment, but it does fun stuff, and I kinda like it. I think I was actually borrowing Skylar's Iroas deck. He was sitting off to the side at this point as we were rotating people in and out of games, and I enjoyed the deck a lot. Although I'd probably say that with any deck that runs Perforos and token generators. Corbin's Kruphix deck unfortunately didn't actually see the commander come out, but it didn't seem to slow him down at all. I liked his use of that Aeon Chronicler, and Altered Ego is always one of my favorite clones when I can play it. He also did a surprising amount of damage between those creatures, and I think if Pat hadn't gained as much life as he did, Corbin probably would have taken him out. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.